My mother wore a white gown to my wedding. Not ivory. Not champagne. Not a light blush that photographs bright white. And just as I was saying my vows, the words I had written and rewritten for 3 months, the truest things I had ever tried to put into a sentence, she stood up, raised a glass, and announced my sister's pregnancy in front of every single person we had ever known. The room froze. The photographer lowered his camera. The officiant stopped speaking. And my mother smiled like she had just done something beautiful. But what she did not know, what none of them knew, was that my real vows had already happened that morning. In the garden. In the quiet. With the people who had always shown up for me. The public ceremony was not the sacred moment anymore. It was the test. And my family passed it. They just did not pass it the way they expected. My name is Amelia. And I want to tell you about my wedding day. Not the version I had imagined since I was 12 years old. The version that actually happened. The version that turned out to be exactly what I needed, even though I would never have chosen it. I was standing near the entrance of the venue, just out of sight of the main hall. My bouquet was in both hands. White garden roses and small sprigs of eucalyptus. I had chosen them myself. My dress was exactly right. My hair was pinned the way I had practiced twice the week before. Everything, for that one particular moment, was exactly as it was supposed to be. I heard her before I saw her. The sound of heels on marble. Deliberate. Unhurried. The particular rhythm of someone who walks into rooms expecting to be noticed. And then I saw her. My mother, Caroline, was wearing a floor-length white gown. Not the blush white of an evening dress worn by a guest who misjudged the formality. Not the natural cream of a vintage piece she had pulled from the back of a wardrobe. A deliberately chosen, carefully fitted, lace-sleeved, pearl-detailed white gown. The room, and I could hear it happening from where I stood, went quiet in that particular way rooms do when something unexpected appears and people are not sure whether to acknowledge it or pretend not to see. Whispers moved through the seated guests like a current. My stomach dropped. My fingers tightened around my bouquet until I felt one of the rose stems press past the point it was meant to bend, and then snap cleanly in two. Caroline reached me near the entrance. She looked at my face and did the thing she has always done when she can see that I am hurt. She smiled wider, like warmth could overwrite the cause of the pain. Oh, don't look at me like that. It's not bridal white. It's elegant white. Completely different. Behind her, my sister Sienna arrived. She was wearing a blush dress that suited her, one hand resting lightly on her stomach in that way she had been doing since she first told us about the pregnancy, a gentle, consistent reminder to the room that something was happening inside her. She looked at me. She looked at Caroline's gown. She pressed her lips together in something that was designed to look like concern and did not quite make it all the way there. From the front of the aisle, I saw Ethan. He had turned at the sound of the murmuring. He looked at my mother. He looked at me. He knew. He always knew. I breathed. I told myself, just get to the aisle. Just get to him. You planned for this. You are already safe. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from right now. And if you have ever had someone walk into your most important moment wearing the wrong outfit and absolutely the wrong intentions, stay with this story. Because Amelia had spent years watching her mother take what was not hers. Today was going to be different. And not in the way Caroline expected. The doors opened. And I walked. I had imagined this walk many times. I had imagined it as pure joy, the kind that fills your chest and makes your face do things you cannot control. And there was some of that. It was there in the faces of the people I loved who were watching. It was there in the light that came through the high windows and fell across the aisle in long gold rectangles. It was there in Ethan's expression when he saw me, that particular, private look of his that belongs entirely to the two of us. But there was also this, the awareness of my mother in the third row in her white gown, sitting slightly forward in her chair, her posture the posture of a woman who is watching a performance she had a hand in producing. And there was the awareness of Sienna beside her, one hand still resting on her stomach. I kept walking. When I reached Ethan, he took both my hands. He leaned slightly forward, not for the guests, just for me, and he said it quietly, so only I could hear. "Look at me. Not them." I looked at him. And for a moment, for that one full and complete moment, the white gown and the whispers and the carefully positioned hand on my sister's stomach all moved to somewhere further away. The officiant began. The room settled into the particular hush of people who are choosing, collectively, to let something beautiful happen. And it was beautiful. For a while, it genuinely was. I began my vows. I had written them in a notebook over 6 weeks. Crossed out. Rewritten. Read aloud to Aunt Lydia on a Sunday afternoon while she sat across from me at her kitchen table and said, yes, that one every time I got a line right. I spoke about choosing a home where I no longer had to earn my place. About finding someone who heard me even when my voice got quiet. About wanting to build something that was ours, entirely ours, with no apology for taking up space inside it. And then I saw it. My mother shifted in her seat. Sienna leaned toward her and whispered something. Aunt Lydia, 3 rows back, went very still. I was in the middle of a sentence. I was saying, I choose you not because love is easy but because you are the person who made me believe I was worth choosing. Caroline stood up. She did not raise her hand. She did not apologize for the interruption. She simply rose from her seat the way people rise when they have decided the moment belongs to them now, and she lifted the champagne glass she had apparently been holding since before the ceremony began. Her voice was the voice she uses at dinner parties and family gatherings when she wants the whole room to face her. Since we're all gathered here as a family, there's another blessing we should celebrate today. Sienna is pregnant. Our family is growing. The room did not react immediately. There is a particular kind of silence that descends when something happens in public that is so unexpected and so wrong that people's brains require an extra second to process it. That was the silence that fell. And then a few guests began to clap. Not joyfully. Tentatively. The way people clap when they cannot figure out what else to do with their hands. Sienna covered her mouth. Her eyes went wide. The performance of surprise from a woman who had been sitting next to her mother for the previous 3 minutes. She was smiling behind her hand. I had stopped speaking. I was standing at the altar, my vow card held in both hands, my mouth slightly open around the word I had not finished saying, and I could not move. Ethan's jaw had set. I know his face better than any face in the world, and what I saw on it then was not anger exactly. It was something colder and more controlled than anger. It was the look of a man who has been patient for a long time and has just reached the end of that patience. The photographer had lowered his camera. The officiant had stopped speaking and was looking at Caroline with the expression of a person who has officiated many ceremonies and has never once seen anything like this. Caroline looked around the room, reading the reaction, and finding it not quite what she had expected. She added, I know Amelia won't mind sharing the joy. That's what family does. I looked at my mother. I looked at my sister. I looked at the faces of the people in the rows in front of me, friends I had known for 15 years, colleagues, cousins, Ethan's relatives who had traveled from out of state. And something that had been building for a very long time, quietly, slowly, under years of being the one who made herself smaller so the room could stay comfortable, stopped moving quietly. In the seconds that I stood frozen at the altar, my mind did what minds do when the thing you have been dreading finally arrives. It showed me the evidence. My college graduation dinner. A restaurant booked by my parents, my name on the reservation, my certificate in a frame on the table. I had graduated with honors. The evening was for me. Then halfway through the main course, Caroline had tapped her glass and announced that Sienna had been selected for the regional dance team finals. The conversation turned. The evening turned. I drove home that night holding my certificate in my lap and thanking people for coming to something that had quietly become someone else's celebration. The evening Ethan proposed. I had called home immediately, shaking, barely able to hold the phone. Caroline had said all the right things for approximately 4 minutes. Then she said, "I should tell you." Sienna took it hard when she heard. "She feels left behind. You should probably call her." I spent the next hour of my engagement comforting my sister for my happiness. My wedding dress fitting. I had sent a photo to my mother because I was proud and excited and I wanted her to see. She responded 2 hours later. The message said, "Beautiful." I showed Sienna and she said it made her feel a bit insecure about her figure. Just something to keep in mind. And earlier than all of that, earlier than I can fully place in time, a small girl learning that the path to peace in her family was through the door marked, "Give it to Sienna." That quiet things had quiet prices. That being good, being patient, being the one who did not make things heavy was the role she had been assigned before she was old enough to audition for anything else. Amelia had spent her whole life handing over pieces of her happiness just to keep the room calm. But this time, the room was full. The cameras were rolling. And there was nowhere left for her pain to hide. Ethan moved first. He did it without drama. He simply reached over, gently took the vow card from my hands because they were shaking too much to hold it steadily, and then he turned to face my mother. He did not raise his voice. He did not perform. "This is our wedding ceremony. Not your announcement." Caroline's chin lifted. The practiced composure of a woman who has never been held accountable in public and does not intend to start today. "I was only sharing good news. There's no need to make this ugly," Sienna said, and her voice had the texture of someone reading from a script they had prepared in advance. I didn't ask her to say anything. But she was still smiling. Not broadly. The particular small smile of someone who is enjoying a situation while maintaining the necessary distance from it. And then from the front row, something shifted. Grace rose. Ethan's mother did not hurry. She stood the way women stand when they have decided that something is happening now and they have waited long enough. She was elegant in a deep green dress and the particular stillness of someone who does not need the room's attention to have the room's respect. She looked at Caroline. She said it simply, the way the clearest things are always said simply. "Then sit down and let the bride finish her vows." The room shifted in the way rooms shift when someone with real authority enters an argument. The tentative clapping stopped. 2 or 3 people near the back quietly lowered the glasses they had raised. Caroline sat. Sienna sat. And for the first time in my entire life, someone had stood in a room and chosen me without me having to ask. If this story is already doing something to your heart, like this video now and subscribe for more stories like this one. And remember, sometimes one person standing up for you without being asked shows you exactly how long you have been standing alone. Grace did in 10 words what Amelia had needed for 30 years. Stay with us. Because the biggest moment is still coming. I took a breath. I looked at Ethan. He gave me the smallest nod. The one that means, whenever you are ready. The one that means, I am right here. And I said, not loudly, but clearly, to the whole room. You're right. Weddings are about family. That's exactly why Ethan and I chose ours carefully this morning. The room did not understand immediately. Caroline frowned. The precise frown she deploys when a situation is not developing according to her mental script. Sienna stopped smiling. Ethan squeezed my hand. And I said. Ethan and I exchanged our vows this morning. In the garden. With the officiant, 2 witnesses, and the people who have always shown up for us. The legal papers are signed. Our marriage began in the quiet, the way important things should. I paused. I let the room catch up. Then I said. This ceremony was meant to celebrate with everyone we love. But it was never the moment my mother could steal. That moment has already happened. And it was peaceful. Caroline opened her mouth. She closed it. She had dressed for an occasion she had already missed. Let me take you back. 6 hours before the ceremony. Before the guests arrived. Before the venue filled with voices and perfume and the particular charged energy of a large event assembling itself. Ethan and I were standing in the venue garden. I was in a simple white sundress I had brought just for this, not my gown, which was still carefully hung in the bridal suite. The garden chairs were empty. There was dew on the grass. The morning light was the specific gold that only exists for about 20 minutes before the day gets on with itself. Aunt Lydia was there, standing slightly to my left, holding my hand the way she has held my hand since I was 6 years old and needed someone to hold it. Grace was there, in a cardigan, looking like morning suited her particularly well. Two of our closest friends stood as witnesses, quiet and present. And the officiant, who had been kind enough to arrive early for reasons she entirely understood. Ethan had said, the evening before, when we were sitting together and I was telling him I was afraid of what Caroline might do, then let's make sure the part that matters is already ours before she gets a chance to touch it. That is what we did. Aunt Lydia had held my hand and said, "Some moments are too precious to leave unprotected." Grace had pressed a small handkerchief into my other hand, old lace, something that had belonged to her own mother, and said, "You deserve a peaceful beginning, sweetheart." I cried. Not from sadness. From the particular relief of being in a room where you do not have to brace for anything. Where you are simply loved, and the love does not come with conditions attached. We said our vows in the garden while birds moved in the hedgerow and the morning light changed slowly around us. They were the same words I would speak later in the ceremony. But standing there, in the quiet, with the people who had chosen us as much as we had chosen them, those words felt like what they were always supposed to feel like. Like home. The room had changed. Not dramatically. But I could feel it the way you can feel a temperature shift even when you cannot identify the exact moment it started. The guests who had clapped awkwardly at Caroline's announcement had settled. The tentative energy of people who did not know what to do had been replaced by something quieter and more considered. They understood what I had just said. And the understanding was rearranging the room. Sienna's face had gone through several expressions since my announcement. Surprise. Calculation. Something that was almost hurt, though I could not be fully certain whether the hurt was genuine or performed. She said, "So you had a secret wedding without your own mother?" I looked at her. I had practiced this moment too. Not vindicatively. The way you practice the thing you have needed to say for a long time, so that when it finally arrives, you can say it the way it deserves to be said. No. I had a peaceful wedding without people who keep turning my life into a stage for someone else. The room absorbed that. Caroline's composure, that practiced, image-conscious composure that had carried her through decades of getting what she wanted in rooms full of people, cracked just slightly. Not all the way. But enough. Her expression moved from offense to embarrassment and stopped there, lodged somewhere uncomfortable, because the guests were watching and she could not manage them all at once. Mara, my wedding planner, moved quietly from the back of the room. She was the most professionally composed person I have ever met, and she had been briefed for exactly this kind of situation, because I had told her, 3 months ago, something will probably happen. Be ready to help me take the moment back. She signaled the musicians. The ceremony music returned, gently, creating a new beginning inside the same event. The officiant looked at me. I nodded. I took my vow card from Ethan's hand. And I finished what I had started. Not for Caroline. Not to prove anything. Not as a performance of resilience. For Ethan. For me. For the version of us that deserved to stand at an altar and finish saying what we meant. Some people will call you selfish the moment you stop letting them take from you. They will dress it up as family loyalty, as love, as, that's just how we are. But protecting what matters is not selfishness. If you believe Amelia deserved her own moment, fully, without interruption, without apology, comment, "She deserved peace," below. And share this with someone who has been taught to make themselves smaller so someone else could feel bigger. The reception began the way receptions do, with a collective exhale, the relieved energy of people who have been sitting in formal rows and are now allowed to move, find the people they know, get something to drink. Most guests behaved exactly as guests should. They found us, they hugged us, they said the beautiful things people say at weddings when they have genuinely witnessed something and want to honor it. Nobody mentioned the interruption directly. But several people squeezed my hands a little longer than necessary. A few looked at me with the particular warmth of people who understood without needing it explained. Caroline and Sienna had regrouped near the far end of the room. I was not close enough to hear everything, but I could read the energy. Caroline was working the room the way she always does when she needs to rehabilitate a narrative, moving from person to person, making her case quietly, rearranging the story so she was the one who had been misunderstood. Her expression was the expression of a woman who has done something she knows was wrong and is now in the process of deciding she was right all along. Sienna, beside her, was doing her own version of the same thing. Quiet. Slightly wounded. The performance of a woman who had simply been sharing her joy and could not understand why the room had turned cold. Aunt Lydia was standing near the canopy table when she heard it. Caroline, speaking to a cousin, not quietly enough, saying, "After everything I put into this wedding. The planning, the support, everything I paid for. And this is how she treats me." Aunt Lydia put down her glass. She turned around. And she said, in the polite and entirely devastating voice she reserves for moments that require it, "You didn't pay for this wedding, Caroline." The cousin looked between them. The room immediately near them went quiet. Ethan and I had paid for the majority of it ourselves. Saved for 14 months. Made choices about what mattered and what could be let go. Chose a venue we loved over a venue that would impress people we barely knew. Grace had contributed the venue deposit as a gift, given freely, early, with no strings and no subsequent claim over the day. Aunt Lydia had paid for the alterations to my dress, quietly, because she wanted to and because she loves me. Caroline had paid for the centerpiece florals at one table. One table. She had then, in the months between booking and today, told enough people enough times that she had, of course, helped fund the wedding that the story had become, in certain tellings, her wedding that she had generously provided for her daughter. Mara was standing nearby when Aunt Lydia spoke. Caroline turned to Mara with the expression of someone expecting a professional ally. Mara said, with the pleasant neutrality of someone who has seen everything and is paid to be accurate, "All vendor invoices and payments were made by Amelia, Ethan, or Grace. The guest table centerpieces were the only item covered by a separate party." Caroline said there was obviously some confusion. There was no confusion. The cousin had somewhere else to be suddenly. And Caroline stood in her white gown in the middle of the reception room with the story she had been telling quietly dismantled, politely and completely, in front of 4 people and a professionally calm wedding planner. I found my mother near the side hallway, away from the main room. I had not been looking for her. But when I saw her there, I understood that this was the conversation we were going to have, and that I was ready for it. She spoke first. She said, "You've changed. You used to care about family." I said, "I cared so much I let you hurt me quietly for years." She said Sienna needed support. Pregnancy was emotional. She had only been trying to bring happiness into a happy day. I said, "And I needed a mother during my vows." Caroline went still. And I said, "I have needed a mother at my graduation dinner, and my engagement, and my dress fitting, and every birthday where the room turned to someone else halfway through. I needed a mother who would sometimes just be there, without redirecting, without making space for Sienna in every moment that was mine. I am not angry about today alone. I am tired from everything that led to today." Caroline looked at me. And for the first time in my memory, she did not have a redirect. There was no practiced smile, no reframing, no arrival of the voice she uses to manage rooms. There was just her face, without the performance layered over it. Smaller. Older. Less certain. I said, and I said it clearly, without malice, the way you say things when you are finally saying them for yourself and not for the audience of them. "You can stay if you choose to respect this day. If you cannot do that, then I need you to leave." She did not answer immediately. I did not wait. I went back to my wedding. She found me near the bridal suite, where I had gone briefly to fix my hair and have 3 minutes alone. Sienna stood in the doorway. She had the look of someone who has been having an argument with themselves for the past 2 hours and has not fully resolved it. She said, "I want you to know I didn't ask her to say it during the vows. I didn't know she was going to stand up." I said, "I know you didn't choose that exact moment, Sienna." And then I said, "But I also know you told her you felt ignored. I know you told her you wished people knew about the baby. You handed her the ammunition and trusted her to choose the right moment. And you know who she is. You have always known who she is." Sienna was quiet for a long time. Then she said, smaller, "I didn't think she'd do it during the vows." I said, "No. But you didn't stop her either." She started to say something. Stopped. I looked at her. I thought about the girl she had been before she learned that being the center was easier than earning the room. I thought about the person she was going to be responsible for teaching, in a few months' time, what love looked like. I said, "You're going to be someone's mother soon, Sienna. Please don't teach your child that love means stealing the room." She did not answer. But she did not leave immediately either. She stood in the doorway for a moment, and I could see her considering something. And sometimes that is where change begins, not in the apology, but in the pause before it. Ethan found me when I came back. He looked at me the way he always looks at me when he wants to know how I am without asking in a way that requires me to perform fine. He said, "Do you want to go? We can leave. Car is right outside. Nobody would blame us." I thought about it. I thought about the flowers still on the tables and the food still on the pass and the people who had traveled and gotten dressed and sat through something uncomfortable today because they loved us enough to come. I said, "No." He said, "No." I said, "I'm not letting her have the evening too. We planned something beautiful and I want to have it." He smiled. And we went back in. The first dance. The music started and the room arranged itself in that particular way. Stepping back, turning toward us, phones raised, faces soft. I felt the eyes of the room. I felt Ethan's hands. I felt the evening opening up into something that was simply ours. At the back of the room, Caroline sat in her white gown. It did not look as powerful as it had at the beginning of the day. It looked, in the warm reception light, like someone who had dressed to take up space in a story and had arrived at the wrong story. Grace, in the third row, was watching us with the unhurried tears of someone who has been present at the right things in her life and knows it. Aunt Lydia had her phone out, not performing, just keeping. Halfway through the song, Ethan leaned close and said it quietly. "Still our day?" I rested my head briefly on his shoulder. I said, "Still our day." 3 weeks after the wedding, the video arrived. A link in our email, from the videographer, with a note that said she had put her full care into it. Ethan and I watched it together on a Sunday morning, in the apartment that was becoming our home, with coffee and no particular plans. It was all there. The flowers. The light. The processional. Ethan's face when he saw me walk in. Aunt Lydia watching from 3 rows back with the expression of someone witnessing the thing they had been hoping for. And then, the interruption. Caroline rising. The glass. The announcement. The room going still. And then Ethan, turning. And Grace, rising. And me, finding my voice. And then me, finishing my vows. I watched the footage of myself finishing those vows. My voice shaking slightly at first. And then steadying. And then, by the last few lines, clear and certain and entirely mine. I realized, watching it, that my mother had not ruined the wedding. She had revealed, in front of every person we loved, exactly why Ethan and I had needed to protect our mourning vows the way we had. She had demonstrated, publicly and permanently, the pattern I had spent years trying to explain and nobody had been fully able to see. She had done me the strange and painful service of making visible what had always been invisible. I sent her a message that evening. I wrote it slowly, reread it once, and sent it before I changed my mind into something safer. I love you. I will probably always love you. But I will no longer give you access to moments you cannot respect. When you are ready to show up differently, I will be here. I did not block her. I did not close the door completely. I created distance, which is different from disappearance. Distance can be crossed when people choose to cross it. Disappearance cannot. Sienna sent a message the following week. Short. Imperfect. It said, "I've been thinking about what you said. I'm sorry, Amelia. I'm trying to do better." I read it 3 times. I believed the trying, even if I was not yet sure about the better. I wrote back, "I know. Thank you." And I meant it. Caroline wore white to be seen. She announced Sienna's pregnancy to take the room. But she did not know Amelia had already protected the part of the day that mattered most. And sometimes, the greatest victory is not stopping people from showing who they are. It is finally believing them when they do. If this story touched your heart, like this video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that protecting your peace is not a betrayal of family. It is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. And tell us in the comments, would you have let Caroline stay at the wedding, or would you have asked her to leave? There is no wrong answer. We want to hear yours.